Hello everyone, welcome back to Remind, knowledge-sharing channel self-development through good books. This week, I want to share with you an incredibly valuable book. Do you know Mark Twain, the great American author? He was not only a writer, but also an entrepreneur and a venture investor, renowned worldwide as a humorous novelist. However, he once went through a period of profound despondency and spiritual collapse due to a severe illness. Yet upon casually picking up a certain book, he became as excited as a child, devouring it in one breath, forgetting to eat and sleep. This book wasn't a masterpiece about a famous historical figure, but a novel about the coming-of-age experiences of an 11-year-old girl. It was the book titled Anne of Green Gables. Anne, with her red hair and freckled face, was an orphan who led a life of poverty and hardship. Despite her cruel fate, she could still become the happiest person in the world, like a little sun illuminating herself and warming others. She has inspired countless readers across many subsequent generations. If you feel life is too dull, pick up this book to understand that your tedium has its reasons. One writer said that sometimes people can be ignorant, but must not be boring. The most important thing in a person's life is to live interestingly. What is the point of living a monotonous, dreary life like the color of a desert for decades? Interesting people essentially possess an immensely powerful inner strength. Even with eyes full of sorrow, they can disperse the fog and find poetry and distant horizons within. No matter how many ups and downs they encounter, they can still sing. Even when advanced in years, they can still smile and say, "I don't worry about old age. When I'm old, I must still be delightful." Can you feel it, the power of being interesting? Scientists are often stunned when observing celestial bodies, wormholes and particles in the universe. The world beneath astronomical telescopes or microscopes is often utterly magical. For instance, many assume every drop of water is the same, but German scientists observe that inside each water droplet lies a pattern, and each pattern is unique. From this perspective, we see that the Creator is also quite fascinating. Everything in the universe inherently carries its own interesting essence, and we ourselves are no exception. But how have we lived that so many people have lost or failed to develop that innate interesting nature? There are hundreds of thousands of beautiful people in the world, but those with interesting souls constitute only a tiny fraction. Truly, there are too few interesting souls in this world. More accurately, living an interesting life is a rare ability for modern people today. According to the author, Anne's growth process at Green Gables is a healing story. In this story, there are no bad people, only peculiar ones. Nothing inherently bad, only peculiar things. You might worry that a story lacking personal conflict and drama would be very boring, but on the contrary, its wonder will make you reluctant to stop. After reading this book, you will see that the difficulties, pains, and dullness in your own life can, if possible, be changed and healed by an interesting soul. No matter what life is like, your task is simply to be interesting. Everything has already been arranged. Now please join me in listening to a share from Remind titled, "An Interesting Soul Can Heal Everything," through the famous novel Anne of Green Gables by Lucy Maud Montgomery. Part 1. An Interesting Life. One half must be mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas. On Prince Edward Island lived two peculiar old people, Marilla and Matthew Cuthbert, at Green Gables. They were a pair of siblings who had never married, had no children, and lived reclusive and aloof lives. For the two of them, life at Green Gables was like a stagnant pond, remaining almost unchanged and quiet for decades. Every day, Marilla was always busied with firewood, oil, fish sauce, and salt. For over 60 years, she had never set foot away from this place, eating and sleeping on schedule every day, weaving cloth, sewing clothes, tending to livestock and sheep. She had no other hobbies nor any friends to chat with. Then there was the character Anne, an orphan sent from the asylum to be their foster child. She had just arrived, but was immediately enchanted by the scenery of Green Gables. Marilla warned the girl not to look at those useless things. The cherry tree in the yard bloomed with flowers white as snow. Anne excitedly called it the Snow Queen, but Marilla said in a displeased tone, "The fruit of that tree is small and bitter, and it attracts lots of bugs." In truth, life is a mirror reflecting your own visage. If you are boring, life will be tedious. If you spend your entire life busy merely for the most basic existence, you will only end up neglecting yourself. An interesting soul is one that, even in its darkest state, can retain a sense of wonder towards life, to discover the interesting things the universe has inherently created and then savor them. Little Anne, abandoned by fate time and again. Her parents died when she was 3, taken in pity by the Thomas couple, only to be abandoned again in the countryside. Rescued by the kind Mrs. Hammond from starvation, striving resourcefully among her 8 children, only to be sent back to the orphanage in the end. When joyfully being taken in by the siblings at Green Gables, she almost got sent away immediately, just for being an ugly, red-headed girl. They needed a boy, misinformed by the intermediary, so she was sent here by mistake. But even knowing she might have to return to the orphanage tomorrow, Anne still allowed herself to enjoy the delight of immersing in the scenery here. She sat by the window, looked at the cherry tree for a while, then gazed at the mountains, watched the distant stream, gave the cherry tree an adorable name, and conversed with it. Anne said, "If you decide to be happy, you can always be happy. You will see many people like Marilla in real life. Those who harbor an interesting soul, love and enjoy nature like Anne are very few. Most of us are often busy in the whirlwind of life, our days consumed by worries over basic sustenance. So why do we let ourselves be relentlessly pushed forward by a pre-programmed societal script? Go to school, graduate, work, get married, have children, send those children to school, stay home to look after grandchildren, and then die. We spend decades being busy for the most fundamental life, thinking we have lived a full life, but in reality, we have only lived half-heartedly. Because we have failed to perceive the greater part, the poetic charm of life. We have let an empty soul inside our shell obscure it from us. Back in the day, I had a friend in the countryside. You often took me on your bicycle across the fields. You loved comparing the clouds in the sky to strange shapes. You said you would become a writer someday. But now, every time I talk with you, the conversation only revolves around your 2 growing children, complaining about how busy work is, the pressures of money. When I returned to my hometown after years studying abroad and met my old high school friends, I didn't know if I was the one feeling alienated in the crowd or if my friends were about to lose half their lives. The topics of conversation, the worries, the goals would only circle around children, spouses, rising real estate prices, and increasingly expensive market vegetables. Every time was the same. I tried sharing about Anne with some recent university graduates, but their grimacing faces seemed to want me to recommend a book on get-rich-quick secrets, enhancing skills to advance further, to keep up with peers, not read a dreamy book seemingly for children like this. Even when fascinating things from nature are right beside them, nobody wants to look, deeming it romantic, illusory, silly, a waste of time, abnormal, and impractical. If life loses its poetic charm, it is like a blunt knife, not fatal but truly capable of hurting you for a very long time. People will suddenly realize that, even without great storms, having achieved material accomplishments, desired goals, and completed the societal programming like everyone else, with a boring soul you will still be eroded by these dull days. But do you think the culprit behind all this might be you yourself? Don't close your heart. Don't blame the sun for not shining. Without immersing yourself in the universe of nature, without discovering the poetic and charming things in life, your existence can only be a barren land. The sociologist Frederick once said, "Suffering, like happiness, is just a real feeling in the heart. The reason life is boring is that you live like an empty shell. An interesting soul will always be able to see rivers, lakes, mountains, and seas, to feel the poetic things in this universe, even on cloudy, stormy days. And no matter how difficult, how distorted life becomes, interesting things will circle back to heal you. Part 2. An interesting life. Even if daily life doesn't change, let imagination soar high. Anne had a cruel fate, but what enabled her to turn difficult days into joyful ones? That was imagination. She told Matthew that when she was abandoned time and again, she lived in extremely desolate places. Without imagination, she couldn't have continued living. One writer said that little Anne possessed two priceless treasures. One was a sense of wonder at life, the other was an optimistic imagination. When Anne first arrived at Avonlea station, she chose to wait outside instead of in the ladies' waiting room, because outside offered more space for imagination. Seeing the street full of white flowers and cherry blossoms cascading down the gutters, she immediately pictured a bride in a beautiful wedding dress with a thin, delicate veil. In the eyes of the Cuthbert siblings, the surrounding scenery was so familiar it became mundane, but in Anne's eyes, it was as beautiful as fairyland. Anne gave them lovely-sounding names, for example, the Lake of Shining Waters, the White Way of Delight, Lover's Lane, the Birch Path, Violet Vale, the Snow Queen, Idlewild, and so on. Faced with a classic, utterly plain dress, Anne could still imagine it to her liking. The simple bedroom, through imagination, could have silk curtains hung and velvet carpets spread on the floor, transforming the cold room into a poetic place. For Anne, imperfect things in daily life could become perfect through imagination. This kind of self-comfort, this deception, might seem ridiculous to the world, but in her heart it was the secret to savoring life. This is like what Francie's grandmother said in A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. Children need imagination, and imagination is priceless. No matter how difficult life becomes later, they won't be trapped in bland, ordinary days. But unfortunately, children today are scheduled with so many tasks by adults. If you ask who the busiest people in the world are, it's probably children nowadays. They must wake up early for school, attend various skill classes and extra lessons in the afternoon, do homework until late at night. Children have no time left to develop their innate imagination, eventually becoming adults living with parched souls, just like their parents now. Anne's imagination not only helped her live happily and optimistically with a healthy mindset, but also healed those around her. The first was Matthew, a famously peculiar old man in Avonlea, taciturn, slow, timid, and unable to speak to the opposite sex except his sister and his aunt. He drove the buggy to the station to pick up a boy to be adopted, but upon arrival, found only a red-headed girl waiting. How could Matthew find words due to this mistake? However, Anne didn't let him flounder. She chattered incessantly. "I'm so glad to see you. I thought you weren't coming. I was getting worried. I imagined all sorts of reasons. Just a moment ago, I thought, if you didn't come tonight, I'd go over to that corner by the road, climb that big cherry tree, and wait until dawn. I'm not scared at all. Hiding among the blooming cherry blossoms, sleeping under the moonlight, isn't that so romantic? It would be like sleeping in a parlor made of marble. If you didn't come tonight, I was sure you'd come tomorrow." The imagination of this peculiar girl truly conquered Matthew and made him decide to take her home. With this little chatterbox by his side, in his inherently dull life, Matthew's world suddenly became much brighter. Compared to Matthew, Marilla, a dry, stern, and industrious old woman, was more challenging. From the start, upon meeting Anne, she didn't want to adopt this girl, thinking she talked too much. But she was quickly captivated by Anne's imagination. When Anne said Mrs. Proctor was as ugly as a sandwich, Marilla stifled a laugh and felt amused, because no one had ever spoken to her with such vivid, imaginative words. Anne's metaphorical language melted her icy heart. In Avonlea, those captivated by Anne's heart were almost all children, while those who saw Anne as an oddity were adults. For adults, imagination is something trivial and silly, because it's impractical. They are too accustomed to thinking carefully and gradually lose the ability to directly perceive the beauty around them. When reading The Little Prince, you see, is this a hat or a boa constrictor digesting an elephant? Why is the adult world always lacking imagination? Why do adults live so dully? Originally children with simple wishes and honest hearts, but due to worries and helplessness from pursuing interests, adults have paid a heavy price. So how can we make life a bit more interesting? Simply by returning to childhood, thinking with the heart of a child. Many difficult problems will become easier to solve. Anne's imagination is the heart of childhood, making the adults in Avonlea begin to discover the obvious beauty they usually overlook daily. And it too begins to return, healing the people here. Part 3. An interesting life, with a heart full of gratitude for everything. If imagination is Anne's most prominent strength, what conveyed that imagination to her was a pure heart, loving everyone and being grateful for life. Before coming to Green Gables, Anne had been through 2 foster families. We can sense her unhappy life in these 2 households. But when Marilla asked, Anne held no resentment, only understanding and gratitude. She had eyes that saw beauty, could capture life's joys and crush them into medicine for every wounded soul. Grateful for life's gifts, Anne carefully preserved her kindness, striving to forgive all malice. She also generously spread her simplicity and passion to those around her. In Avonlea, Anne loved almost everyone, even those who treated her poorly and hurt her. Even plants and everything around her, Anne could offer sincere affection. In Anne's mind, plants too had dear lives. Thus she and all the trees and rivers became friends. She bestowed upon them the greatest love. One author once said, "Kindness is a universal language in the world. It can make the blind feel it, and the deaf hear it." Anne used kindness to repay the living things sprouting from the earth, enriching life. And with energy like spring rain, she made Avonlea, a stifling place, suddenly come alive. Part 4, Conclusion. Around the bend, the most beautiful view awaits. Anne spent 5 years at Green Gables, filling her painful childhood with beautiful memories. Through diligence, she passed the entrance exam for Queen's Academy and received a scholarship. Here, many mature readers might think that something too wonderful seldom lasts long. An overly dreamy, interesting life must eventually face reality. True enough, Matthew, with his heart disease, passed away upon hearing the bank had failed. And the doctor also warned Marilla not to read anymore, not to sew, or she would go blind. This was the first time Anne felt the pain of losing a loved one, and the first time she felt the heavy weight of responsibility on her shoulders. But in the end, Anne gave up the scholarship, forfeited the chance to attend university at Redmond, and chose to become a teacher in Avonlea. She stayed at Green Gables to accompany Marilla, read to her and help with housework. If attending university at Redmond was the straight path of her dreams, then staying in her hometown was a bend, a future obscured. But facing this bend, Anne remained optimistic. "I don't know what lies around that bend, but I'm sure the most beautiful view is there. Those who love life also love its bends." This girl, with an interesting yet resilient soul, understood that no one can avoid the bends life brings. Like rivers in nature, no river runs perfectly straight, because on our forward journey, we always encounter insurmountable obstacles. In life, those insurmountable obstacles are the failures and difficulties encountered while growing up, and they are unavoidable. But precisely because of these obstacles, these tumultuous waves, life becomes more magnificent, and we gain wonderful experiences and lessons. Anne is an interesting soul, like a rainbow with many different colors. The American writer Mark Twain highly praised Anne, saying she was the most lovable and touching child character since the immortal Alice. When reading this novel, you will feel the author's wonderful prose, but note that behind it is not just a storyteller's pen, but a love for life, an interesting soul imbued into the character. What the author wants to impart to us is, use kindness to feel the world's warmth, use imagination to heal life's pessimism, Immerse yourself and feel this universe of nature to savor an entire human life. These are all the elements for you to begin living with an interesting soul. May both you and I become interesting souls, making every living moment hold a bit of poetry and charm to illuminate each chapter of our own lives. Thank you for listening. If you found this video helpful, please share it with those who need it.